All right, we are at the self-service garage here in South Tacoma today. You know, normally I do all of my projects at home in my home garage, and the project today is something that could be done with jacks and jack stands, so don't be intimidated by that. But it would be really, really hard to film. And it was about a year and a half ago that I was wishing, man, I wish there was a garage out there where I could rent a lift for a couple of hours. I reached out to the self-service garage and partnered with them to do this project, and I have to say, sincerely, it's been a real pleasure. The owner's been fantastic, the staff's been fantastic. Absolutely recommend working with them, and they offer a wide range of services.
Yeah, thank you. So we offer everything from do-it-yourself stuff where you can come in, work on your car on a lift, and we provide all the tools that are necessary for the job, to ASE Master Certified Technicians with amazing shop rates to do work. We also have a full detail service in the back that will do anything from a quick wipe down to a full buff wax and interior services. We pretty much can provide anything you need here at Self-Serve Garage, South Tacoma.
Absolutely. So if you watch this and you're like, yeah, well, maybe if you're not in the Pacific Northwest, I can understand. You'd be like, well, that's in Seattle or in Tacoma. And there might be services like this where you live, but if you are in the Pacific Northwest, I totally recommend them and say, come on by, they're great people to work with. All right, today's project is installing a charge pipe from Active Autowerke provided by Extreme Powerhouse. I'm here in the self-service garage here in Tacoma, Washington. They're a fantastic company, and it gives me the ability to get underneath the car. This is a project that you could do with jacks and jack stands, but it'd be really hard and really difficult to film. So I partnered with the self-service garage here in Tacoma, who is letting me use a lift today, and so I can get underneath the car and make it a little bit easier to show you the work that we're going to do. It's an active working garage, so it's going to be a little bit noisier than usual. But this is a great service, and if you're in this area in the Pacific Northwest, I totally recommend using their service. All right, let's get to it and get the job done. Okay, here we are underneath the car. I thought we'd start here first. You can start either from the top or bottom, it really doesn't matter that much. And we're going to take this lower cover off. Now, there's good 20-25 of these 8mm screws holding this piece in place, so this is probably going to be a little boring. What I'll probably end up doing is speeding up the video so you don't have to watch me doing this 25 times in a row. But we'll take all these out. You can see you start in the front to get this piece loose and then just work your way through. Make sure you don't lose any of these so when you can put them back, all back later. So we'll get started on this. Good recommendation if you have them. Power tools isn't the bad thing as you're taking this many off. And in the future, I'll probably do the same. Got my friend Peter helping me out today, so maybe you'll see him at times. Need an extra set of hands. Not that I've grown the extra hands. Just have somebody who's willing to help out today. A few extra hands on this project, which is fantastic.
Can I open this toolbox up?
So as you work your way through this, just work systematically, pull them all out. It's all super simple. There's just a ton of them. I always recommend having a magnetic tool bowl handy. That way you don't lose anything, you don't kick anything, you don't lose the parts. All right, so I'll zip through the rest of taking all these out and back in a minute once we get this plate off. Okay, so the bottom cover is off, all 20-25 bolts later. We've dropped it out and set it aside. It's probably a good opportunity to clean it as well. I don't know about you, but I got a collection of leaves and bugs and cigarette butts that I'm going to be cleaning out and sweeping out to make sure it's nice and clean. So what we're looking at right now is the bottom of the charge pipe where it connects to the intercooler. Now what we're going to be looking at is this little clip right here. Now, it's pretty straightforward on how to take it off. What you'll do is you'll gently pry up and back down the pipe. And there's a little U-shaped tab right here that fits into this piece. This is what keeps your intercooler, or the charge pipe, connected to the intercooler. So we'll pop this up and out, and you'll be able to see how it comes out. And then at that point, this will be loose. What we'll do from that point is we will actually drop and lower the intercooler, because this pipe doesn't have enough flex in it to actually get out, to take it out without moving the intercooler. So we're gonna do that next. There's also the same setup on the other side of the intercooler, and we'll loosen that as well. Okay, so we've loosened the brackets on either side so the pipes off the intercooler can are loose at the moment. But again, because of how tight these connections are, you can't back the pipe out without the intercooler being moved. What we need to do is loosen the fan that's here. There's two very easy tabs. You pull down on the tab and very gently, and I'm using a flat-bladed screwdriver, you just gently pry the fan out. And you can see that there's a little bit of gap in this tab now. So you pull down gently. It's a plastic tab. I could definitely see you breaking this if you really, really yanked on it. So as you'll see, the fan comes loose at this point, and that will allow us to have a little gap with this fan to get a little more space and get it out. So because what we're going to do next is we're going to pull both bolts on the intercooler so it can move out and come down, and we can get enough space to drop it away from the pipes. Okay, so there are two T20 Torx bolts here and here, and that's the only thing keeping the intercooler in. So now with the fans loose, as you can see the clip is here, you can see the intercooler just walks its way back down, and it's loose. It's now loose with the pipe on this side. As we walk this out, now loose on this side. Now, I will say this would be a great opportunity that I would recommend actually doing a charge pipe and intercooler change at the same time, because you're taking your stock intercooler out, but I suspect I'll have a project in the future of pulling this very same part out again. But you also see a great collection of leaves and bugs and other things that you can pick out. But the intercooler's out, and we'll just set this aside, and now we can change out the charge pipe. Okay, so we've lowered the car down on the lift here, and we're going to take this out from the top with the goal of being able to snake the charge pipe out from where it's out from underneath. So it's really pretty straightforward. We just need to take here, you can see this is where the Maf sensor plugs in. So we will pull this plug, and then there's a very similar, the same sort of clip right here on top. We'll take this clip back, this clip out, and then hopefully the whole pipe should just snake right out. So my hands are going to be in the way for a little bit of this, but there's a little clip right here that you need to get a flat-bladed screwdriver on, gently pry up, and this plug will walk back. Now your plug may look a little bit different. Now if you're changing your charge pipe, you're probably in the same place that I am. I've got a JB4 installed, so I've got a little bit of extra cabling here that may look a little different than yours, because my JB4 is over in the corner and its harness comes down. But most people who are changing their charge pipe are, going down the same road I am, where you're increasing your turbo. And so don't be surprised if your cabling looks a little bit different, but they're essentially and fundamentally the same. Now, like I said, my hands are going to be in the way here for a little bit, but we pry underneath this, gently pry into the little clip, the plug will walk back, and then we'll pull the C-clip off. If my screwdriver will fit, which it should. And as with all of these things, you always want to be gentle. One oops, one a little too much pressure, and you're probably going to break something you don't want to break. So you should be able to, there's a little pry clip that I just need to get the blade of the screwdriver under. And in this case, probably my screwdriver is just a smidge too big. So in this case, I'm going to actually change the tool I'm working rather than force to make the tool work. Okay, so I'm back. I just got a little bit of smaller screwdriver. I got my hand in here a little bit better. Again, you just get it underneath that gray, in my case, a little gray tab, pry that tab up, and then the plug will just walk right back off, which is great. So then we'll pull the C-clip at this point, which is here. And we'll pull that. Okay, so let's pull the C-clip. And you pry underneath it. And it should just pry up and away. There you go. All right, it's up. You can see that's up and out. So I'm pressing down the charge pipe to get it away from this interface. There we go. It's off. And this should just walk up. The goal being getting this to walk up and snake up through this pipe. Now I've heard of occasions where to try to get it around this bend, I've heard of people having to cut it. I'm hoping that we don't have to do that in this case. Because it's definitely loose. Now we just got to get it past.
Just be careful of your
Maf sensor.
yeah, your map sensor.
All right, so let me pause for a second because, you know, I'm the DIY guy and my camera's freaking out. I got to figure out why. Okay, so here's what we're going to do. So the charge pipe is absolutely loose at this point. But the last thing you want to do is bang up your Maf sensor, which is what you've unplugged there on your charge pipe. It's an expensive part, and let's not replace it unless we have to, right? So what I'm going to do is I'm actually going to take the Maf sensor off here to be able to take it out and set it aside, so I'm not going to bang it up as I snake the charge pipe up and out through this space. Now, what I'm using a T15 Torx to take the Maf sensor off. Now, I do also want to correct something earlier. When we dropped the intercooler, I said it was a T20. It's not. It actually was a T27. So as I changed tools, I noticed that it was not what I said earlier. So now the charge pipe is just laying down here in this space, and I've put it in a nice solid space where I can just screw against it and get the Torx out for the Maf sensor. So nothing special. Now, I'm always really paranoid about dropping parts. In this case, they drop out of the bottom of the motor with the cover off and everything else off. But again, I try really hard not to drop things. Not only is it a hassle, it takes extra time, but then I've definitely dropped things before and not been able to find them. Okay, so now I'm just going to walk the Maf sensor out of the charge pipe, and it's up and out. So be very, very careful with this part. It's very sensitive and not a cheap thing. So we're going to very carefully set this aside for a moment. Now we should be able to walk the charge pipe out, be able to get it up and out of this space without banging up that sensor. Though we may, like I said, I've heard occasions of people that have had to cut this pipe to get it out. And if we have to, we'll go down that road. I prefer not to if we can get around it. It is definitely a tight space to try to get this thing around. Okay, so we're almost there. All I need to do is get this last piece up and past. I'm real close. And this is a working garage, so forgive any extra noise in the background. The guys here at the self-service garage are fantastic, so there's a lot of other people here today doing work on their cars. It's good for them, good for everybody else. All right, so I'm gonna get this pipe out. Okay, so let's talk about what's going on here. So, like I said, I took the sensor out to make sure that I didn't bang it up at all. If you notice, the charge pipe's a little bit higher than it was before. So I think I found a little bit of a trick. So you can lift the charge pipe up, and there's a lot of space to maneuver, but once you get to here, it doesn't want to come out. That's because there's a downward curve in the charge pipe that wants to snag down low and doesn't want to come out. So what I ended up doing, and I'll simulate a little bit because when I got it, it all came out. And of course that happened off camera, right? So I was able to bring it up as far as I could in this position, and then I realized it's that downward curve. So I was able to torque it and twist it in place, which gave me a little bit more room and gave me a little bit more room to come out. And then I twisted it even further, and it came the rest of the way out. Now, as you can see, there's this curve right here. So when it's sitting in its installed position like this downward curve is what's holding it in place as you try to back it out. That curve is holding it down. So as I slowly rotated, you can see how it rotates and then possibly it came out nice and cleanly. So now, charge pipe is out and we'll work through the rest. So along with this, we're real close to putting the top of the charge pipe back in because the charge pipe is in two pieces where this is in one. And there's a couple of pieces we need to transfer. So there's the lower clip and this upper clip, these little pressure C-clips. So what I've done is I've taken a screwdriver and walked it along this channel and walked this clip out. And I'll do it again on this side as well to walk this clip out because we're going to reuse this clip in the new charge pipe. So there's the top one. Here at the bottom is the bottom one. So we'll take this as well and we'll just have to walk this out, walk this clip off because we're going to reuse these. Yeah, and again, with everything, be real careful you don't break anything. There's nothing worse than doing a project and getting halfway through and breaking it. So we'll walk this clip off as well and transfer. And then we'll put the top of the charge pipe in, we'll lift the car back up, and we'll install the lower. We're more than halfway. Okay, so we're about ready to reinstall this piece or install the top half of the new charge pipe. Now, a couple of things you're going to want to do first. So first of all, this rubber gasket that connects the two, we've already put this on, put the hose clamp on. This is a 7mm socket to tighten this down, and I put it on pretty firmly because we're not going to be able to, very likely not going to be able to get to it again once this is in place. Now, one notable difference, I've got a manual transmission. The automatic transmissions will have a connection here, have a hose connection here that I do not have. So obviously I've left that out in this process. We would need to have unplugged this earlier from the factory one. We didn't do that, so if you do have a little bit of differences, you'll need to reconnect this as well. If you've got a manual transmission like mine, you leave this cap in place. The other thing we've also done is we've reinstalled the sensor in the correct orientation. Make sure that it goes back in the same way that you took it out. These are also 7mm nuts that are put here. These are actually that come with this new piece because the OEM components are like screws that go into the plastic, where these are nuts that go into the metal. So make sure that you use the proper ones. You're not putting the factory screws back into aluminum. That wouldn't be a good idea. So the other thing that we're going to do is we're going to reuse the C-clip that fits up here on top after we fit this back into place. Now, something else that I really want to point out that's super important, and it might be a little bit hard to see, but I'll see if I can point this out here. There's an O-ring that we pulled out of the OEM charge pipe and put here. So it fits right in the little slot perfectly. There's a little bit of oil in the charge pipe, so we just use a little bit of oil to lubricate this O-ring that we put in. That'll help seal the charge pipe onto the intake. Okay, so this should fit this nice and neatly down in. I just want to be really careful because I don't want to bang up that sensor that's sitting there. And it should just fit on just a little bit of effort. Now, you'll also see when you look at this, and I know my arms are probably in the way right at the moment, there's really kind of only one way for this to go. So this goes on, you'll see that there's a little bit of a ridge here, and you can also see from where the metal looks a little different, a little bit of discoloration on how far up this is supposed to go. And I would make sure that you get this right back in, bang, right in the same spot. Now, it is right in the exact same spot that it was before. So we've got the C-clip now. We've got these little arms, or excuse me, on this little horseshoe clip. You got the arms. Those arms point down, so they point down towards the pipe itself. And I've kept it off at this point to make it a little bit easier to fit on. And I just clip that right back into place. You can see it's there, and it's down and solid, and in the same orientation it was before. Pipe's on nice and solid. It should be good to go. Also use this opportunity to plug your sensor back in. It only goes in one way, so take that, clip that in and make sure it's in and firm. You got a good solid click. So now at this point, this is installed and ready to go. Now all we need to do is we're going to lift the car back up, install the lower half. We're almost done. Okay, so the car's back up on the lift, which again, I really want to talk about how great here in the Pacific Northwest, you know, taking advantage of the self-service garage here and being able to use their lift. This makes all the difference in the world. This job could be done with, you know, jacks and jack stands. It could be done safely, but it would be a lot more of a hassle and a lot more inconvenient. So if you have an opportunity to use a service like this, please do. And if you're in the Pacific Northwest, I cannot talk these guys up more. So here we are, we're back underneath the car. I've got the tail end of the charge pipe, and you can see where the end of the upper piece comes down. We've got our connection here. I've walked the pipe up and into that rubber gasket. Now, one thing that I really want to stress, we've got our pipe clamp right here. I've opened it as far as it'll go, and I've put it on first. I've walked it up and walked it over onto the extension of where the top piece is. So that way when we're done, I can just slide it down and into place like that. I haven't tightened it, it's really, really loose right now, and it's sitting right here. And we're going to keep this loose until we get the intercooler back up and fully into place. So if we need to adjust it all, if we need to slide this around at all, we've got that ability to flex a little bit and move a couple inches in each direction. So, but this lower half is in place. When we've got our hose clamp here loose and ready to go. And so now all we need to do is put the intercooler back in place. We're almost done. Okay, so just like on the upper section, something we really want to call out and wanted separately to make sure that you don't miss it. You have to pull out the O-ring that's in the original OEM charge pipe. Now, what's different, the upper O-ring is a round O-ring, so the orientation doesn't matter. In this case, this is not a round one. It's actually flared. So the tube side flares up and out. So when you pull this O-ring out, you'll see that it's kind of shaped like with a flare to it. That flare goes to the inside, narrow side to the opening, wider side to the back. There's a groove in here that fits in, and you just can see, my fingers will be in the way a little bit for parts of this, but you can see that there's an opening track in the end of the charge pipe right here, and you just fit it right into that space. Now again, there's a little bit of oil in here, and I've used a little bit of oil on the O-ring, and as you can see, it fits straight in. It fits seamlessly. If you missed that, you're probably going to end up having some problems. You're going to have some leakage around your charge pipe, which isn't really good. It's also a really simple thing to miss. Candidly, I could have missed it really easily at either end. So make sure that you add that. I will say in my case that any of the other guidances or DIYs that I read didn't mention anything about these O-rings, so you want to make sure to include that. Okay, so now we're in a place to reinstall the intercooler. Okay, so in a case like this, I don't see any reason why you couldn't do this work on your own. One person at a time, but also, like I said, my friend Peter's here helping me out today, which is nice to have two sets of hands as we lift this in. Because again, we've got the new charge pipe on one side, and we also have the pipe on the other side as well. So as we go through these things, you want to reconnect both. So that's having an extra set of hands so you can connect both pipes on both sides is really, really nice. We're going to slide the intercooler back up into place. The fan shroud will click back into place, and we'll reconnect the pipes on both sides. And then we have our two T27s to bolt this back into place. It should be really straightforward. I also took this opportunity to clean the year's worth of debris off the top of my intercooler, because it was a bit of a mess. It's kind of nice to have those things cleaned out. So this should slide right neatly back up into place. So we've got that on one side, and we've got, now we've also got these body panels on this side that get in the way a little bit. We just walk it around that. Here we go, hang up right here. I've gone too far. There you go. There's also there's a little bit of rubber trim here on this front piece. It tries to hang up a little bit, but you just slowly, carefully walk past that, and it should walk right back up and in. In a future project, you'll see me taking this intercooler back out again as we put in an aftermarket intercooler. It's a little bit bigger, but right now we're dealing with the OEM, so we'll keep this in place.
They charge you a fee, but
okay. So, it's just being a little bit stubborn.
Yeah. So, you may be paying them a fee, but you're expanding to a much larger.
There we go. All right. So this is kind of walking around this rubber gasket. I keep wanting to getting hung up right here. We'll get that up and around. There we go. It's almost all the way back in. It's just still hung up on this side just a little bit for some reason. Now you see it came down pretty easily. It should go up relatively the same. It's just hanging up just a little bit as it goes. All right, so we'll get this straightened out and the rest of the way up, and then we'll get it reconnected. Okay, so we've reinstalled the intercooler. Now the one thing, there's a couple of things you want to note with this as you do it. there are slots on either side that the intercooler has to fit up into. So make sure when you're sliding it in, it goes back into those slots properly. You've got two T27 Torx here on either side. You have one on either side, and one here, one here. Reattach the tube here with the clip in place. Make sure it's solid. Put the C-clip back on the lower half of your intake pipe, or excuse me, the charge pipe, and you're good to go there. So then all we have to do is put the cover back on, and we're done. Okay, so everything's back together. The challenge really is, and I'll speak to this a little bit more as we go on, the challenge is getting the intercooler back in with the pipe in place and fitting it all back together. It's a little bit like playing Tetris. The lower section of the intercooler pipe, or the pipe to the intercooler, excuse me, is keyed, so it only goes in one way. So what I actually ended up doing was attaching the lower pipe in onto the intercooler and then fitting the intercooler into place because it fits in grooves on either side. And then with it fed up above, you've got the rubber coupling where it meets the upper section. I then removed the clip from the upper section to let that be loose so I could fit this lower section in with the rubber coupling on, and then fit with the upper section of the upper pipe loose. I then fit that into the rubber coupling and then fit the top into place just a few minutes ago. So it's all connected now, and I'll show that again. But it's a little difficult getting all these pieces put together, and it's just a matter of being patient and putting it together in the right order. So the intercooler's in and secured with its two Torx screws. Our fan clips are back in place. Our two hose clamps for the rubber connector between the two charge pipes are tight. The lower section is the clip is on. The clip on this other side is on, and everything else is all connected. So at this point, everything's all back together, and all we need to do is put this lower plate back on with the 25 some odd 8mm screws that all go into place. So I won't make you sit here and watch me putting in all 25 because that's a bit boring. I'll show it when it's done, and we're almost done. Okay, as you can see, everything's buttoned back up. Nice thing is with this softer material, if you wonder where some of the screws where you can see where the screws go, you can see the impressions in the material. This is also a good opportunity. So when you take this down to clean it all out, I don't know about you, but I had a lot of gravel and a lot of pickup extra stuff in here. So I used a broom and swept it all out really nicely. It's all reattached and everything is good. So at this point, we just lower the car and we're good, and we take it for a drive and we're good to go. All right, hopefully you can follow this project and you'll be as successful as I was in this. And this is an excellent performance increase for you and your car. All right. All right, I'm back at home now after a successful drive back from the self-serve garage back here to my house. It also was the perfect distance to have a good test drive in the car. The car felt perfect the whole way. And it might be my imagination, but it felt just slightly a little more sharp. It felt slightly more responsive, which in many ways would make sense. This upgrade of installing the Active Autowerke Charge pipe is really walking down a very logical progression of what you can do to increase the horsepower, increase the responsiveness of your F-Series platform. It's all a very logical build as you go through. Now the other advantage I have is I do have a Burger Tuning JB4 installed, and so with the Bluetooth adapter I can actually look at my phone and have it be running the client software, and I can actually see a lot of those very detailed settings that's coming out of my car. So this is something I'm going to be able to measure and watch very, very closely and see those performance bonuses over time. I wanted to thank my partners. Mike of Extreme Powerhouse is absolutely fantastic and a pleasure to work with this Active Autowerke Charge pipe. Also, George of the Self-Serve Garage in Tacoma, Washington, he and his staff and his location are absolutely fantastic. If you have the ability to take advantage of his service or one like it, if you're in a different area of the world, I really suggest you do. Now again, this is something you can do without a lift, but it does make it easier. The one other thing that I want to add to this at the tail end is a little bit of observation at the end of buttoning up this project. As you can see as you watch this video, we worked from the top down, including taking out the intercooler. And at the end, I reversed and went the other direction. With the intercooler in, I worked on the lower section, connection, and the upper section. And that was a little bit easier for me with the lower pipe being keyed to fit onto the intercooler. I think you can do it either direction, and I think it's good to have the options of both. And at the end of the day for me, going the other direction, bottom up, worked better. Now my other observation is, I don't even think you necessarily need to take the intercooler out. Now, you don't lose anything if you do. It makes it a little bit more open space to work with if you do take it out. But if you work from the bottom up method, I think it would be possible to drop that lower cover, pull your factory charge pipe, and then fit the Autowerke lower section of the charge pipe directly to the intercooler without taking it out first. And then connect in the upper, connect the upper. I think that would be definitely possible, and so I'm going to suggest that you try that first. Now in some cases it's definitely easier to take the intercooler out, and you don't lose anything. So if you leave it in and you try that, and you try the lower section and you struggle with it, you don't have the space to work with, then feel free to take it out. I just think it's possible to save that 15 minutes or so of taking the intercooler out if you don't have to. So in retrospect, that's what I would have tried first, and I'm going to suggest that especially in review of the project as I've gone through. Thank you again to all of my partners. You've been fantastic to work with. Please leave questions and comments below. I do my best to respond to everybody that I can and answer the questions where I can. My goal in this is to show that with a few basic tools that you'll see in the tool list that I have included, you can do this work too. This isn't something that you need to spend a couple $100s for a shop to do for you. So if you can do this work, you can have that sense of ownership and improvement in your car. Thank you again to my partners. See you on the next project.